accident, Rodney.
All right, everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, everybody.
Hi.
My name is Rand Wilson. I am like a volunteer convener or organizer for our local community labor and environmental coalition, Somerville Stands Together. And tonight we're having a teach-in as part of a nationwide program of labor education and celebration of what is honestly an uprising by young working class kids working in jobs at Starbucks, at Trader Joe's, at Amazon, on college campuses all across the country. There's a rising of people who are organizing for a future that they can believe in. They're organizing for better wages and working conditions, but they're organizing to address systemic inequality and the inability of our system to deal with climate change. They're not seeing the kind of progress that they want to see. And that's what inspired Labor Spring, hashtag Labor Spring, it's up there on the banner. And that's what animates the work of our community labor coalition, Somerville Stands Together. Tonight, this program is co-sponsored. Somerville Stands Together is a coalition of around 23, 24 different community labor and environmental groups here in Somerville. And it was kicked off in 2019, I think, with the support of the Boston Building Trades, which we're very grateful to. And we're co-sponsored tonight by the Racial Justice Collaborative.
Yay!
More about the Racial Justice Collaborative, but it's a Somerville-based nonprofit that is trying to promote some difficult conversations about race in America, race in Massachusetts, and race in Somerville. And that's what we are hoping to do tonight, is to begin that conversation. It's not going to end it tonight, but we can start to begin a constructive, positive conversation about race in America, about economic inequality, and the roots of these issues and problems that we face. And Somerville Stands Together has been working with a number of local environmental groups, one of which is the Climate Coalition of Somerville. And
Yay!
also a member of Somerville Stands Together. And we're going to kind of try to bring the issues of labor, inequality, and inequity together around our vision of a Green New Deal. And so Leigh Meunier is going to be talking about that. We're going to try to keep our remarks really brief. Rod Badero is from the Painters Union, is here tonight, and he's going to be our timekeeper. And give him a hand. And we're going to kind of try to keep everybody within the 4, 5, 6 minute range, and then when we're done, oh, wait a minute, I have a slide that's all about this.
Okay.
There's the agenda. I should.
Yay!
Yay! So I'll talk a minute or two about the labor movement. Diane's going to talk about race and the impact that that has on workers of color in Somerville today. 1 minute. And then, no, this isn't my 5 minutes. And then Leigh is going to talk about that vision for a Green New Deal that SST and others have been working on for a couple of years here. And then we'll have some discussion. When we get to the discussion part, we're going to turn the camera off because we would like to make that a freewheeling kind of thing. So I've already got a hand from Tracy.
Oh, just clarification, and it doesn't matter to me either way, but if there's a camera rolling, is it something that's being simulcast now? Is it something you're going to be showing on Access Television later? Okay.
I believe the
That's
plan
lovely.
is to have it on the Somerville Media Center's Somerville Labor Show, if not other outlets within the Channel 3 environment of cable in Somerville.
Okay.
So, yeah, it was a really good question, but it'll just be the presentations part, and then we'll get to the discussion. We'll shut the cameras off for that. Okay, so Rod, you can start my 5 minutes. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what do unions do, just some basic education about that, some of the struggles of labor in Somerville, and then the challenges that workers face here in our community and across the country, or around the world, as a matter of fact. So the first thing is, what do unions do? And there it is. Unions, when workers are organized, they kind of bring a measure of balance between the employer and the employee, right? So they balance power in the workplace. They raise wages not just for the group that's in the union, but that has an impact on all workers that are, say, in similar fields. And they promote equal pay because we have some principles that we apply in the workplace, which is equal pay for equal work, and non-discrimination is built into the collective bargaining process. Unions shrink the racial and gender gaps because women and people of color who are members of unions earn much higher pay than their non-union, or I should say, not yet union counterparts. And we improve benefits by bargaining for things like health care and retirement improvements, and for protections from arbitrary scheduling, things like that. We create safer workplaces, and as I mentioned, reduce economic inequality. So who belongs to a union in Somerville? This is not a comprehensive or exhaustive list, but we have a lot of public employees, the biggest which is the Somerville Employees Union, and our own Somerville Municipal Employees Union, the president of which is here today. Yeah, we have construction workers, we have the laundries, we've got Stop and Shop and Be Fresh, and of course the big bad employer up on the hill that shares a campus with Medford at Tufts, and I understand there's a rally there tomorrow at 3:30 in support of the custodians and
Cafeteria workers.
oh, in support of the cafeteria workers.
Who earn $6 to $8 less than the ones at Harvard, which is hard to imagine.
Hard to, yeah, here's Tufts. Okay, so I'm gonna jump ahead because I'm running out of time. And what are some of the struggles of the labor movement in Somerville? And I listed a bunch here, which is boring to look at, but I brought some exciting pictures. And Mark Stern was one of the leaders in our Put Somerville to Work local hire campaign that was spearheaded by the Somerville Community Corporation. Mark was our liaison to the Sugar Group on that one. We lost that fight, but I'm going to talk more about that later. Here was a rally. You'll see young city councilor Matt McLaughlin on the right. But this was a protest down at the Max Pack site by many people in the community and the building trades. This was a strike at Angelica down in the industrial park. We picketed Diva Restaurant every Friday night for months. Many of us were there at those picket lines, and eventually won a wage theft settlement and closed that restaurant down. Now it's still an Indian no, it's a Japanese restaurant now. This is there's another picture of Matt McLaughlin. This was a recent strike at the Stop and Shop down in East Somerville. And here is the Somerville Public School paraprofessionals' big campaign to raise their wages. We won a very significant victory for those paras. That's a picture of a packed City Hall. This was a huge rally that we held down in Union Square. 1 minute. To protest non-union construction in Assembly Square and a plan by a developer to build affordable housing in Clarendon Hill, but not to pay the prevailing wage, to violate state law. And wanted a waiver, and we didn't think that waiver was necessary. So we were protesting that. This is the Well Hospitality workers trying to keep their jobs which are still threatened in Union Square because of development of the T and all those massive science and housing buildings. And here it is, the Painters Campaign, right in Union Square. You've seen the sign, they're out there for weeks. And I hope we're going to hear from Rod Badero later this evening about the developments that are happening there. Very exciting. What challenges do workers face in Somerville? Well, guess what? Despite the best efforts of the labor movement, too many workers are paid low wages and have to pay high rent. There's little or no pension retirement for most of the jobs that people have. Health care is inadequate unless you're lucky enough to get on Mass Health, in which case it's actually a pretty good plan. But no voice in decisions, discrimination, favoritism, harassment, health and safety issues. And here's the one that we can really do something about as a community, which is to stop employers from aggressively interfering in workers' right to organize. When workers come together, we win. We win, but employers should not be interfering in workers' rights to organize. And as a community, we can begin to hold our employers to that standard. I'll give you a good example. The Diesel Cafe, Forge Cafe, and Block 11 are all jointly owned. They agreed to voluntarily recognize Unite Here, and they've recently negotiated a contract which concluded successfully. So there's an example, but they never would have done it if it wasn't for the pro-worker context that we've created in Somerville. Now, here's the opposite of that. This is a strike for one day that we just had out in front of the Starbucks across from the car wash on Somerville Avenue, and they are continuing to break the law. Those Starbucks workers will be having their union election soon, and we want to support them so that they win. My time is up. I want to introduce. That was close. We'll have more discussion about all of that. Here is Diane.
And in addition to the three of us here, there are three people here that are going to give 2 minutes of responses to what we're saying, and they'll follow us. So Greg and Stephen, and is it Rod?
We're going to just wing it on the labor person.
We're going to wing that.
Yeah.
So race and economic justice, before I start, don't start my 5 minutes, I just want to say that when I started here in Somerville, so we are a Somerville-based organization, a nonprofit in Somerville, and we do a lot of virtual stuff. So our members and our followers are all over the country, and even all over the world. But here in Somerville, this is where I live. And so when I started thinking about racial justice in Somerville, I really started thinking about climate change, and I started thinking about unions, and all I could remember about unions was that my family couldn't join. And so I said, well, that's not good. But then when I remembered climate change, I say, whenever I see a climate change event, it's all white people. I said, why is that? So here is our response to all of those things. We are finding common ground. We are going to all work on racial justice. And that will help us, and we're going to work on racial justice, we're going to bring workers. There's reasons why we're divided. And I'm going to talk about some of those today. So I'm going to go right into, so my topic is dense. I'm going to bring in the Supreme Court, but I have notes because I've only got 5 minutes. But fortunately, my slides that you can all have hypertext in them, and they work. So once you get them on your computer, you can see references to everything that I'm going to say. So let's start with Somerville. Here we are, Somerville, and on the left you can see that the blue are white people. So white people, it's not just only Somerville. This also covers some of Cambridge. and some of Everett over to the right. So when you start seeing more people of color, it's probably not in Somerville. It's somewhere else. But if you look to look at this fairly, because if you look at the black population for the last decades, it's always been under about 5%. And so you will see larger numbers of Latinos, Hispanics, and larger numbers of Asians. But I'm going to focus on the black population because that's kind of the crux when we have to look at anti-blackness to see what is really going on. If you look at the slide on the segment on the right, though, in Somerville, the dark green spots are the most diverse areas. So that represents diversity. And when you look at the red areas, those are the least diverse. So by diverse in the red, we mean it could be all black or all white. That's not diverse. So moving on here's where you see it. We can see that almost 70% of the population, and this is the 2020 census, white. You can see the Latino, I say Latino.
Thank you.
Population in Somerville, we're at 12, just almost 13%. And the black population is just under 5%, and Asians in the red are almost at 10. So that's where we are now. But black families have always lived in Somerville. And so here before Somerville declared slavery illegal in Massachusetts, there were black people here, but they were enslaved. And so that was before 1783. But there were black people here. And then the records will show you that in 1860, there were 8 free black people living in Somerville. And it didn't stop there, because on Cameron Ave, we all know where Cameron Ave is, up in North Cambridge, Somerville, there was a camp there, a Union soldier camp. And so after the Union soldier Camp Cameron, it was turned into a refugee center for African American refugees escaping not escaping, but leaving the South from the Civil War. So there were black people here then. But now we see that there's a recognition in Somerville that there's a problem. And in 2015 and in 2020, the city started to do outreach to find out what's going on with race and racism in Somerville. So if you look to the right there, you can see that there were issues. There were issues, clearly. Your schools always start to show your issues. So there were issues. Here's why. If we go all the way back to the beginning of the country in the Supreme Court, this is really important to see that the Dred Scott case, and that was a case where the Supreme Court justice said that he declared that blacks have no rights which the white man was bound to respect. So this is the foundation of the country. And here's Dred Scott. And how is that, what happens after that? Here it is. Jim Crow, the aristocracy, took the world and gave the poor white man Jim Crow. And he said, if you're hungry, you may not have any food, you might not have shelter, but eat Jim Crow. Show your children that look who they are. They're white people. They have more rights. They have rights black people don't have. So they gave them Jim Crow. And that's a psychological advantage that people clung to. And then after the Dred Scott case, we flowed right into the Plessy. And Plessy is the Supreme Court case that said segregation. And so what do we have? Segregation now and segregation forever, some people said. And so that was the Supreme Court. We had the Dred Scott Supreme Court and then the Plessy Supreme Court. Okay, in 1954, that broke with the Brown versus Board of Education. But in Boston, as we all can recall, the Boston school desegregation was a big issue. And this problem of segregation wasn't just in Boston. It was everywhere. It was in Somerville. We were segregated. So, and then there's redlining. So in addition to school desegregation, all kinds of segregation, we had segregation of housing and redlining. You put red lines around the black areas, they can't get mortgages, they can't, you can't invest in those areas. And then there were deeds and covenants and deeds in Somerville that prevented black and other people of color from moving into Somerville. So this is why we have the problems we have today. These are just the big areas. Now here we are, we're coming together. And what do we say? We say our future must be based on justice. We can't create a Green New Deal if we're not willing to dismantle the structures of white supremacy in this institution that make up our society. And so labor has known for a long time. Labor's been fighting to get everybody involved for a long time. But now we have to reach hearts and minds and in all the rank and file. We've got to work together. And we don't have long.
It's all good. Okay. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Okay, I was told I have to be brief, and that's impossible for me, but I'll do my best. So I'm Leigh, and what I'm seeing my primary function in this moment is really just to kind of catch people up on what's been happening with the Green New Deal locally, the connections nationally. I think a lot of sort of setting that baseline for conversation tonight means really expanding out, thinking national, where is this even coming from in connection to local, and then also having to reach back in time to where it all began, essentially. And then ultimately, right, this is going to connect us into a conversation where all of us together are helping to shape this vision of a Green New Deal for Somerville. Okay, so panning out, national level. So I think people have been hearing Green New Deal, especially in the last few years, mainly in connection with what happened in 2019. But again, I do want to just reach back, giving some context to this. So the current Green New Deal, a lot of it is modeled connecting back to FDR's New Deal, right back in the mid 20th century. Goals of that, many of those overlap with the current Green New Deal, connections with bolstering the US economy, reducing unemployment, providing a social safety net, and instilling confidence in the government. Again, 2019, right, this is a couple years into the Trump era, and some big concerns around trust in government. So one of the big concerns with that, though, and as Diane mentioned in connection with unions, is that the New Deal falls super flat, falls short in terms of racial equality and making access to those jobs available to everyone. Coming to Green New Deal more recently, Green New Deal did not, again, come to fruition in 2019. It really began, you can stretch it back to 2008. So there was actually a global Green New Deal that was created by the United Nations in 2008. And then some elements of a Green New Deal were showing up in some other election platforms for other presidential candidates back in 2008. Jump to more recently, as you can see, this is a headline from the New York Times. We have 2019, Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts, and then Representative Ocasio-Cortez of New York. People probably know those names pretty well by now. Created Green New Deal. Again, had many goals. The main goal is the one I'll lift up here, which is really about connecting opportunities and jobs and economic opportunities with decreasing our U.S. emissions to net zero and meeting 100% of our energy source standards by 2030. Maybe it's something else, just jumping down to, is reminding us that Green New Deal, similar to our resolution, non-binding, ambitious, and I think a criticism of it was that it was somewhat vague. So how are we actually going to implement something like this nationally? So jumping to the local. Unfortunately, that did not pass at a national level, but what Somerville said is we want to commit to this. So we're going to pass a resolution that both affirms many elements of the federal Green New Deal, and then also make some of those connections to our local, the local context. And so this is just lifting that up. And that was in September of 2019, so a few months later. And as I just pulled some text there from the first few sections of it, of that resolution as declared by the City Council. Maybe one that I want to just lift up is Section 3, right? Envisioning a future where Somerville residents can live healthy, prosperous lives. So again, what is that going to look like in the context of economic and racial equality? Okay, so 2019, over the last few years, we can ask first the question I have here on the left on the slide: have we lived into this? If so, how? Some aspects, I don't know if people here were able to go on Monday night also to hear the dialogue between Mayor Ballantyne and Senator Markey, but they lifted up some things to celebrate. What are the ways that we actually have been living into a Green New Deal? Two sections of our Green New Deal, especially in the lines of displacement and green economy, we have actually made some strides. So I do want to just lift up some things that Mayor Ballantyne did mention. They primarily connect more, I think, to the housing and transit-oriented aspects of the Green New Deal as opposed to the jobs and the economic inequality. But with the installation of the GLX, now 85% of residents are within a 15-minute walk of the T. That's awesome. The Somerville Public Schools and Community Action Agency of Somerville now have fully subsidized T-Pass availability for students, families, and low-income residents. And some might know that we now have a first citywide bike network plan. And then in the last couple of years as well, I think last year 637 trees were planted prioritizing low canopy neighborhoods. So there's definitely been some strides, but again, not much, especially in the realm of green jobs. So that's where SST came in. We said, insufficient, we need more. And this is where, as a community, we can help demand more and actually cultivate some of this ourselves. So, Labor Climate Connections began, 350 and Climate Coalition joined SST. I don't know when 350 joined, I know CCS joined in early 2020. We said we got to get everybody together, Labor and Climate Connections. So we had a summit, got all these groups together. We finally, the final results of that was we created two different working groups. One was focused on shovel-ready projects for when funding was ready, and another was looking at the Green New Deal and also the Climate Forward Plan that came out in 2018 to see how we can improve upon that. And then what we did is we shopped that out to the City Council and Mayor, mayoral candidates at the time in 2021 and 22. Everybody unanimously endorsed it. There was a lot of energy, momentum, and celebration for it. And then this is just naming some of the Green New Deal goals that we have been pushing forward the last couple of years. So I'm not going to go through all these, but this is just to celebrate some of those shovel-ready practices and projects that we wanted to put forward. These, part of the reason I wanted to lift these up is because this is that intersection of economic and racial inequality, right? An example of that could be the energy efficiency rehab program. So $1.2 million has actually been put towards that. And if I could focus on affordable housing, right, we're getting again at the economic and racial inequalities there. And especially if you focus on Somerville Housing Authorities properties. And so another piece of that, again, we just want to note, SST has kept our eye on funding opportunities. People might know a little bit about the American Rescue Plan Act. So tonight, I think a major focus of our conversation and what opportunities might come to us would be looking at the American Rescue Plan Act and then also Inflation Reduction Act. And if you are paying attention to what's happening now, I'll just name some things here. As mentioned, Sustainable Week, right, is this week. We're in it. And 2 nights ago, Senator Markey, along with Mayor Ballantyne, had a conversation talking about what a Green New Deal could look like now and the ways that the $1.something trillion of the Inflation Reduction Act could be invested locally. And then the other thing I just want to name that we're talking about within SST and want to talk with you all about tonight as well is that the Climate Forward Plan of 2018 is up for updates this year. So yeah, let's get involved and figure out ways that we can really bolster community engagement in that process.
Yeah, okay, we have 3 more people.
Oh, right, our responders.
Yeah, right.
But let's just...
Okay. Okay, yes.
So first of all, I want to thank the Somerville Public Library for hosting this event and making this facility available for us. we're really lucky to have this space. We need many more community spaces in Somerville for people to gather and to organize. Flatbread Pizza donated the pizzas and the salads tonight. Really terrific. And really want to thank the Somerville Media Center. Producers, board members, and staff of that organization. Terrific work, and we're really happy that they'll be promoting it. And of course, I want to thank all of you for attending. We are going to have some short responses tonight, and Diane's going to facilitate that. Then we're going to shut the camera off and have a freewheeling conversation, which Diane will also facilitate. So, thank you very much.
When you say that, do you want me to turn the microphone off too?
Yes, we won't need the mic,
Cool.
because it's not doing anything except for your broadcast, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's get started with our respondents and jump right into the conversation. Diane?
Well, thank you again. I want to emphasize what Rand said, and even say it more strongly. We need you. We need all of us. We're running out of time, folks. We must work together, cut through the nonsense, and get it done. So, I want to call on Greg. Greg is our first respondent. We're going to go from the last person.
Thank you, Diane. I'm a member of Somerville Stands Together, and I'm
Stand up.
all these knees. What they used to be. I get a discount because of the knees. I'm with the shovel-ready working group of our Green New Deal. And I can't think of anything more local that needs to be addressed, especially with hiring local marginalized folks and trained. If we take a look at the Mystic housing and the fact that they're adjacent to the I-93 where the particulates have been shown to be deadly, there are people of color predominantly in the Mystic housing, and the asthma rates have gone through the roof in there. And there was our Professor Doug Brugge did a wonderful study on that a few years ago. We had him on the Somerville Labor Show recently. But I think one of the shovel-ready projects we'd like to see is to have local marginalized people trained in putting in some kind of particulate filtration systems and air conditioning systems in the housing there. Because that's the nexus of injustice, racial, economic, and labor. So that's my 2 cents worth about doing something locally. Yeah. Me and my big mouth. Thank you.
Stephen. Stephen, if you want to come up, or do you want to speak from there?
I can speak from here. So,
Okay.
hello, everybody.
Hello.
I am from RSJ, Stephen Flyte from RSJ, and just really.
What's RSJ?
Oh, Department of Racial and Social Justice. It's always.
Okay, thank you.
Anna, thank you. Sorry. I'm just very excited, and I have 2 minutes. But when I was 19, I worked at a battery acid factory, making car batteries, and I was a UAW member. And the reason we had such $15 an hour almost 30 years ago was because of the union. And so if we are pro-worker, which we are, one of the lens I want to look at is young people. And that they understand what is a union? I mean, we know what it is, but what is a union? And my sense is that not all kids, young people, know. And then once they're out into the workforce, they're wondering about these jobs. And I drove today, proud of the GLX, it's exciting. Was there the diversity that we expected on that? When you see any of these buildings and you look, that is a serious issue. And so the other piece I just want to lift up is there was an article, New York Times, April 5th, and it was looking at engineers from public schools, I don't know, public universities, applying 200 applications to become an intern at an Amazon or a Google who paid $24,000 for the summer, not including living expenses. Those jobs did not go to those young people. They went to more affluent kids. And so I think what I would end with is we've got to get the young people. And Leigh and I did a program last year with the what's the name?
Oh, it's part of it. It's the Climate Justice Jobs Program.
Climate Justice Job Program. There's some climate jobs. I just want to see us connecting young people and how do you get in those jobs? What are those jobs even called? You define them as them. So thank you all for tonight.
So we're going to call on you more on helping us with the young people and Leigh. And we have one more person that's going to talk about unions.
Except,
Well, Rand talked about unions, and you can see, and we're all talking about unions.
that's
We
great.
know that who are workers? They're all of us, right? So we'll all work together and
Diane,
get young people.
I'm just going to ask, is there a union member here from Somerville that maybe heard something that they want to respond to in the dialogue so far? Somebody?
Does it have to be in a Somerville union specifically?
No, they just need to be from Somerville, sister. Tracy,
Okay.
step up to the plate.
I don't think I need that, right?
No.
All right, so I'm Tracy Pratt. I live here in Somerville, but I work and teach in Cambridge, so I'm part of the Cambridge Education Association and part of the Massachusetts Teachers Association. So that is our state and local labor union. Here in Somerville, we have the Somerville Educators Association. One of the things I want to say and respond to, I feel like Stephen alluded to it, and Diane, you showed some things about students, like just being able to have access. I feel like there's not enough access to special programming, to the $24,000 a year job. Like you said, kids don't even know about it. So the kids, the population we're talking about, they are not getting direct access to services they need, to the free or discounted T-passes. I can't think of how many people who need that probably don't even know that that exists for them. So I feel like what we could do better, and I always think about schools and students and children, and as much as we can say, hey, school is integrated, kids might be able to walk into any school, but if you're an educator in a school, you know that when you walk into a classroom, it could look different. You know that once you start talking about levels and math and reading, and there's no such thing as tracking, you can see the tracking on paper if you look at it. And I know if I see it in Cambridge, I know it exists in Somerville too. So until we really, really start working to change our schools, nothing is going to change.
Yeah, thank you.